I'd like to welcome you, and we are just so privileged to have Chris Quesenberry, who is going to be speaking about advocating for gastroparesis. He's from Evoke Pharma, and you're going to hear more about that as we go along. Chris, thanks for being here. My name is Mary Angela De Grazia Tucci. I'm a longtime patient with motility disorders, including gastroparesis, and I'm also humbly honored to volunteer for the Association of Gastrointestinal Motility Disorders, or AGMD. We were incorporated in 1991. We're an international nonprofit, and we serve as an information clearinghouse for digestive motility disorders. We also are an educational support group for patients and their families, and we are a resource for those in the medical, scientific, and nutritional communities. And with that, I would like to introduce Chris. Chris, can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we begin the program?
Thank you, Mary Angela. Really appreciate it. I appreciate AGMD having me on the call today. I am really humbled as a longtime pharmaceutical executive. It's rare that we get a chance to speak directly to patients outside of market research. So I'm just really thrilled and pleased to be with you. I am, I guess, 38 years within the industry. I've worked with big organizations like Merck and Novo Nordisk, but I also have worked with small organizations like Orexigen Therapeutics and now Evoke Pharma. I have a passion around adding value, so making sure that whatever we do, we leave it better than where we started. So I'm married. September 3rd will be 31 years, and I have 4 grown children. And so excited to have a moment with you guys today. I'm a pretty informal person, so if folks have questions along the way, please do stop.
And we're also very privileged to have Melissa Adams Van Houten with us today. And you want to tell everybody just a little background of you?
Yeah, my name is Melissa Adams Van Houten, and I was diagnosed with idiopathic gastroparesis more than 11 years ago in February of 2014. And I currently serve as the AGMD's Public Policy and Outreach Director and manage several online GP patient support and advocacy groups.
And we're very grateful for that too. This program is made possible by a grant from Intera Medical, in addition to the sponsorship of Evoke Pharma. So Chris, can you begin your program advocating for gastroparesis?
Thank you, Mary Angela. And I appreciate everybody taking some time out of their day to be on the call today. I wanted to take a moment to kind of talk about Evoke's journey in advocating for patients with gastroparesis. Obviously, it's August, and August is Gastroparesis Awareness Month. But as Mary Angela and Melissa know, I really I'm hoping we can kind of transition from advocacy to action and make sure that we can have some changes within the broader disease area of gastroparesis. What I hope to share with you today is a little bit about Evoke, a little bit about Evoke's journey, our work to understand the people that have gastroparesis and what their needs and hopes and desires are, and how that journey has been for us. I think at the end, we'll kind of see that there are some commonalities between what we work through on a regular basis and what you are working through. And we just get only a portion of what you experience. I do want to take a quick moment to recognize a friend, Richard McCallum. Many of you probably know, maybe you've heard presentations from him. He is a luminary within gastroparesis. He has been a researcher, contributed to many of the innovations within gastroparesis, and at the moment he is not doing well. So I'm hoping that you can say a prayer for him for improving health. And I want to share a little story about him because first and foremost, even though he was a scholar and a clinician and a gastroparesis luminary, he was patient first. When we launched in October of 2020, it was in the throes of COVID. We had a virtual launch and he was presenting to our company launch meeting. And in the middle of his presentation, he got a phone call. And Richard stopped because he recognized the phone call was from a patient. And during the middle of his presentation, he took the patient call and addressed what the patient's needs were. And so I think that's emblematic of who Richard was and what drove his efforts to make things better for patients with gastroparesis and other motility disorders. And in addition, he contributed a good deal to the development of GMODI, and over the years has become my friend. So just a moment to recognize Richard among the others that have contributed greatly to this, this important disease. So who is Evoke? Evoke is a specialty pharmaceutical company. It's based in San Diego, in a little community of San Diego called Solana Beach. It was founded by two very passionate individuals, Dave Gagne and Matt D'Onofrio. And currently they have 3 employees. They are a virtual company and they've done a lot of work to ensure that they could bring this product to market, but did so in outsourcing to other experts and folks that kind of had certain expertise. They are solely focused on a gastrointestinal disease, and they're dedicated to improving the delivery of existing products. Our product is GMODI, which is a nasal spray metoclopramide, and I hope to share a little bit more about that in a few slides. Our mission is to improve the health and daily life of patients struggling with diabetic gastroparesis. To me, words have meaning, and I just wanted to focus on a couple ones within our mission. So obviously, with a medicine, you want to position it to help people with their health, to feel better, to reduce symptoms, to improve outcomes, all those types of things. But as important to me is the daily life. This disorder is pretty debilitating for many people and takes people out of their game and prevents them from pursuing their passions. It, people, are unable to work or have to take less work. There's financial struggles, there's disability, and there's simple things like eating a meal with family that are really important and have to be central to how we're thinking about helping patients. So the daily life here is important. The other piece here is struggling. And a lot of people look at that word and say it has a negative connotation. I look at that in terms of triumph and the fact that we're still striving to improve. We're still striving for a cure. We're still striving for something that would be more than improvement to symptoms, but a disease modifier. So that struggling to me, as written, as we kind of put it to our team, is more of a positive orientation. Our indication, as you'll see, is for diabetic gastroparesis, and that is solely because at the moment where we were doing our trials, that was what the FDA allowed. They allowed us to study diabetic gastroparesis only. I'm pleased that that has advanced over the years, and now we can do studies in both diabetic as well as idiopathic gastroparesis. So why does Evoke focus on gastroparesis? Well, I mean, as you all well know, I don't have to tell you, there's an unmet need. You experience significant burden, but so does the healthcare system, because there are not, consistent, reliable treatments. The number of visits to physicians and emergency rooms and hospitalizations are pretty significant. On average, a person with gastroparesis visits the hospital 4 times a year, and that's just unacceptable. Many of the options are predominantly oral, and there's relatively little innovation in the space. There's becoming more, and we're seeing signs of hope. But in the past, there hasn't really been a lot of innovation. And our ability to have an impact and improve care is central to our mission. So our 4As, as we think about not only Gastroparesis Awareness Month, but think about gastroparesis on a daily basis through our representatives, through our marketers, through my own actions, is really about 4 things. It's about achieving awareness. Without that as a baseline, that this disease exists, that you as people exist, and that you have symptoms that are central to this disorder is really important. And that acknowledgement has to be the next step. It's really the appreciation and understanding for what's going on and taking that extra step to learn. Then you can get action and advocacy. And I love this quote. I'm a big quote person. But I love this quote from Maya Angelou around the wisest thing I could do is be on my own side and be an advocate for myself and others like me. To me, that's the most important part of this whole sentence, and others like me. And that's what we hope to do this month. We're pretty active in raising awareness, but as I tell my team, it doesn't stop in August. It has to happen on a daily basis. And we have worked hard to try and understand and empathize. And we do a lot of focus groups. We do a lot of market research to understand everything from the symptoms you first experience, even before you go to a physician, all the way to diagnosis, treatment, and living with GP. And these are your words that we've captured in terms of the process and what happens during this process. And hopefully they sound familiar, they feel familiar, but we need to do better as a healthcare industry on allaying these and changing these words over time, which is part of what we're trying to do. The journey to diagnosis can be difficult, and I'm sure that each one of you have a story around your symptoms and what you thought versus how you did. So you probably had an expectation. I have symptoms, I go to the doctor and they tell me what's going on, and probably this is more like what has happened. There's pitfalls, there's delays, there's denials, and all sort before you finally get to the official diagnosis. And from the work that we've done, it's taken up to 5 years for a diagnosis. Many people see on average 4 physicians before they get that diagnosis. We've heard over and over again how people will go for a gastrointestinal scan and only to have it come back negative, which then there's a question about whether gastroparesis is truly there. And then untold number of misdiagnoses or unnecessary procedures. And in some ways, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. The symptoms of nausea, vomiting, bloating, distension, sense of fullness and abdominal pain. Yes, abdominal pain is a real thing. Is non-specific to gastroparesis. And so it's not the first place that, that physicians look to kind of what may be causing it. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to move it earlier in the consideration set to say, man, let's look closer at this. Let's see if we can, kind of shorten the time, because 5 years is not acceptable for patient for an average time to get a diagnosis. I think everybody recognizes, you recognize, the FDA recognizes there's an urgent need for development of safe and effective therapies to treat patients with gastroparesis. They said this in 2019 as part of their updated guidelines on gastroparesis. Their first guidelines were in 2015. Their updated guidance was in 2019, kind of towards the tail end of the development of our product. And I think many of the lessons learned within the process were adopted from the development of GIMOTI in the clinical program. So, as we kind of embarked on the development program for GIMOTI, we kind of thought the process would look like this. We found an asset that was with another company. It held promise. We had a light bulb moment to say, well, wait a minute, this is a nasal spray. And if patients that have gastroparesis, their stomach's not functioning, why would we give orals, right? It doesn't make sense. If we retain food, why wouldn't we retain the oral tablets? So we thought it was going to be a fairly straightforward process, and it might take, about 4 years to do that. What it really looked like was very different from that. So we started in 2007, as I mentioned, and we finally achieved approval in 2020. And along the way, there was many things that contributed to that. We needed to reformulate the product, so we tested 65 formulations. There was some debate around whether we needed to complete another phase 2 or a phase 3, and then it turned out that we needed to do both. What we found in kind of working with the clinical trial sites is we had to educate them on gastroparesis. We had to ensure that they actually had the diagnosis within the clinical charts. When we started, the FDA, and I think I credit them for this, is that they asked for a patient-reported outcome measurement tool, which is great. But when we asked them which one do they want us to use, they said, well, none existed, so you have to develop that on your own. So that was another year of delay trying to kind of get to something that works. And to this day, it's the only validated patient-reported outcome measurement tool within gastroparesis. We had numerous meetings with the FDA. We completed an additional trial to show no cardiac concerns by doing a thorough QT trial, which says, hey, do you along the QT way within patients? And we showed that we did not. And then we actually at the very end, we got a complete response letter from the FDA, but then we were able to successfully resolve that and gain approval just in time for the global pandemic of COVID to present itself. So all told, it was about $110 million invested to bring GIMOTI to market, and what should have taken a short amount of time, relatively speaking, really took a lot of guts and grit and grace from Evoke and the leadership there to persevere to bring this product to market. And we thoroughly believe that one of our X factors was the incorporation of dozens of patient stories and support in the filing of the FDA. It's not normal to include that in the NDA filings, but it's something that we did, and we believe that patient voice was really part of why we were able to successfully get FDA approved. Commercialization of GIMOTI hasn't been either easy. As I mentioned, we launched during COVID, and access was not good, as you might imagine. So we had to do a lot of virtual meetings, a lot of discussions offline, and there's no playbook about how to launch a product in a global pandemic. It was really a very tough time for patients, a tough time for providers, and a tough time indeed for the industry as well. But along the way, bringing a new product to market, especially when there hasn't been a new product for many, many years, is tough. And so, you have habit, you have physicians saying, oh, I forgot that's an option. You have, physicians worried about coverage or not having time to do a PA. Obviously they're, with, our product being, a metoclopramide compound, there's a concern around extrapyramidal side effects or tardive dyskinesia. And there's my personal favorite that physicians say that their patients are doing fine, which, I think is, all these things, when you look at it, they're honest, they're normal human reactions. And so in many ways, I don't fault them for having some of these reactions over time. But nonetheless, there are opportunities for us to improve and focus on how can we streamline the process, how can we get closer to the workflow of providers so we can make sure that you have the access. Because, if you think about some of these things, you probably experience the same, right? So in some ways, we're aligned around the issues that are facing us within the gastroparesis market and the need to kind of get more new treatments, but also the treatments that are here, get them approved. We Evoke is small, but we have a small team that is advocating for better care on a daily basis. So our sales team is comprised of 27 gastroenterology care specialists and their leaders. We have 4 field reimbursement managers. We brought them on board earlier this year to work on the coverage, to work on the prior authorization process. And again, our headset is to make sure that it's easier for you, easier for offices, so there's less delays and more approvals. And then we have, a number of other people that are supporting us. And on the daily, you can see the quote on the left-hand side. This is from a couple of years ago from one of our tenured gastroenterology care specialists, that, you're the reason why they get up and go to work on a daily basis. It's what motivates them. So yes, we're a company that's for profit. Yes, we do better when our sales are better, but the underpinning of this and what we kind of talk about all the time is every prescription is an opportunity to help a patient and the hope that maybe they have improved symptomatic relief. So that's kind of guiding us on a regular basis. And what we advocate first and foremost about is kind of what you experience. And so these are 2, and there's a lot of words on the slide, so I apologize here, but maybe some of these resonate with you. These are 2 studies that are done not by us. We've done a lot of market research that validates these components, but to show the dissatisfaction that's in the market. So many patients, most we might say, report their symptoms as being severe, and that's regardless of what the delay in emptying is. That there's, their health is negatively correlated with the symptoms. Okay, newsflash, I'm sure I'm being, master of the obvious to you guys, but it's not just nausea and vomiting, it's abdominal pain that you tell us time and again. What kills me is that most of you rate your health as fair or poor, and unfortunately that you're worse off this year than the previous year. And so to me, again, that's unacceptable. On the right-hand side, I'll just kind of make a point around, products that are removed from the market. There's significant dissatisfaction around that because, that there's a subset of patients that product actually may work for. And to us, that's unacceptable, whether it's our product or whether it's another product. And in fact, if you think about the landscape, and I was working with Mike Klein a couple of days ago to build a slide over the last 40 years of the number of products that have been studied for gastroparesis and at least made it into phase 2 trials. And there's been more than 20 drugs studied in the last 46 years, most of them actually in the last 20 years. Only 2 have been approved. That's Reglan and Timoti. And only 3 appear to be progressing in phase 2. And while I think that is not a good track record for our industry, what I'm hoping for is for increased investment, increased concentration on gastroparesis. I was just at the American Neurogastroenterology and Motility Society this past weekend, and Minneapolis and had a chance to meet with the leadership of that group. And my chief question among them was, how can we increase the prioritization of gastroparesis? Because we need more studies. We need more presentations on it, even if it's to kind of outline the gaps and the options. And frankly, we need more young fellows that are interested in motility and gastroparesis. When you think about those products that are FDA approved or treat the symptoms of gastroparesis, many of them are of oral or parenteral. I think I forgot one that is a suppository, and I think those that have talked with me on a regular basis know that I advocate for different routes of administration for patients, not just for their gastroparesis meds, but also for other meds. And because obviously, if the stomach is not working properly, you've got to think about other ways to get the medicine to its intended treatment target. So, nasal metoclopramide Gimodi is the first product for the treatment of diabetic gastroparesis in the last 45 years, and it's a non-oral treatment. Our indication is both relief of symptoms in adults with acute and recurrent diabetic gastroparesis. What I want to say is this is not a cure, and we're very clear about that. And we strive for a product that does have that both controls symptoms, reduces outcomes, and is a disease modifying agent. What I do think is we are a product that can help. But it's not for everyone. So it's not recommended for people under 18. If you have moderate or severe hepatic clearance, it's not for you. If you are using a product that has, interactions with other metabolic pathways or enzymatic pathways, it's not a product for you. We have a medication guide that I think is very clear and helpful that I encourage everybody to look at. And you can get that by visiting www.gimodrx.com. It's there. And movement disorder that is often irreversible. So things like eye twitching, lip smacking, and talking, military movements like that. So it can happen, but there's more and more data emerging about the incidence of tardive dyskinesia and how often it happens and who's more at risk. So we're currently trying to do a lot of work here to understand that. But I wanted to be clear. I'm a person that likes to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. So you kind of get it honest from me. So why would Gimodi make sense? Well, pills have to get through the stomach and into the intestine to work. So by going through the nasal pathway, you bypass the stomach, you bypass the liver. The Gimodi won't be collected in the stomach, and I think. I've heard many stories of I can't swallow, or the thought of taking pills makes me nauseous, or frankly, I vomit my medications back up and I wonder if I'm absorbing my medications. Well, that's the why, right? Is how do you reroute to success? How do you, bypass, the dysfunctional stomach and get a product into the body? And we're looking at this compared to oral, and we've shown significantly less hospital administrations in a really large real world evidence trial looking at claims database of 514 patients that we can show reduced hospitalization. So I think it's important, the route of administration may be one of convenience in some other spaces, but it's not a route of convenience here in patients with gastroparesis. That's why you see people, resorting to suppositories or trying to crush their tablets or whatever that might be to get the medicine in. The both the ACG and the AGA have guidelines for gastroparesis. Nasal metoclopramide or Jamodi was added in 2022 to the ACG guidelines. But again, from a patient perspective, for those that have diabetic gastroparesis, we want to make sure that they're, doing what they can to, eat the right foods that will, not exacerbate symptoms and also help them, get nutrition, but also to kind of work on the glucose control, because that has a relationship to gastric emptying. So even before you think about a pharmacologic agent, you need to be thinking about those things. But we were fortunate that the ACG recognized the data we have to support Jamodi and added to the guidelines. In May, the AGA proposed new guidance for gastroparesis that really only suggested two therapies for treatment of gastroparesis: metoclopramide, both oral and the nasal, and erythromycin. And so they suggested against the use of other agents, many that patients rely on right now to help them with their symptoms. So domperidone, procalcipine, previtant, triptyline, buspirone, and cannabidiol. And so they opened this up for public comment, and I know they got a pretty significant reaction for both the medical community and I imagine the patient advocacy community as well. And in fact, if you see on the right-hand side, we disagreed with the AGA's proposed guidelines against. So when they asked for comment, we said, well, we don't like, and we disagreed with the recommendation because, these products, even if they help a small percentage of the patients, are important tools. And even if they only provide relief for a symptom, it's important not to take away these medicines. They also propose recommending against using procedures like G-POEM and gastroelectric stimulation and others. And again, we disagreed with those. And further, we talked to the guidelines and our response that we were concerned about patients and their ability to obtain proper and prompt diagnosis. And we acknowledge that it is difficult and there are limitations around testing. So they really primarily talked about the gastric emptying scintigraphy, and we wanted them to kind of share a little bit more about the other options to diagnose. Similar is true when we think about products that are not approved. When tradipitant was denied by the FDA, we came out with a press release saying that's unfortunate, and that we need options. When domperidone program ended with the FDA, we had a similar press release that said, look, we need to find ways to keep this product available for patients, and we can't make them go to Canada as an example. That's going to be a long path ahead, but I think Melissa, Mary Angela, and others agree that our view here is not solely about Jamodi. We need to make sure that there's options available for you. So it's just really unconscionable that there's not more choice. But we take our advocacy in other forms around education. And this is a simple piece around how medication and the route of administration may make a difference. So taking this piece and working with advanced practice providers who provide most of the care for patients with gastroparesis. We got input from them. We got input from patients to help us to say, how do we help people in simple terms, what the oral process is versus the nasal process. And so we take serious not only in the development program to include patient input, but also in the development of our materials. And there's another example here. You hear that all the time that patients find it hard to advocate for themselves, and they find advocacy in a number of different places. It's family sometimes. It's sometimes come from unsuspecting places, and sometimes it actually comes from the physicians and providers that care for them. But hearing that and hearing, hey, we need something to help us to advocate. We created a tool again with patient input to say, what are some questions that you can have maybe ahead of the appointment to kind of to fill out that not just is about symptoms, but the impact of the symptoms. Do you have flares? Have you been hospitalized? And what aspects of your life have changed, right? It's not, again, it's not just the health, it's the daily life. And so if you can come in with a tool like this to help, it may help at least a couple patients to be clear about what their current situation is and how they are feeling. So this is a resource that we created to assist in some small way. And there's other ways that I think we can help to take your feedback into account. We are continuing to invest in areas to support education and learning. So we're doing trials. I mentioned the hospitalizations, but what kind of impact can treatment have on use of healthcare resources, visit to the doctor, ER, hospital stays, length of stays, and that type of thing. But also, what's the incidence of tardive dyskinesia? And importantly, can we identify who might be at increased risk of gastroparesis? So at least you're equipped with the right information. And there'll be more information coming on this, but I do want you to know that we recognize this, we hear this as a concern, and we want to help to inform this. And in many ways, we've been taught to be afraid of metoclopramide, not just patients, but also providers. And I want to move the paradigm from being afraid and avoid to being educated and for us to be monitored. Because I think, in a lot of cases when Reglan is mentioned or metoclopramide is mentioned, the natural reaction is to caution patients around the risk of TD. And while it's there, I think we all need to be clear about how often it actually occurs. And it may be something that we need to recognize, to be concerned about, to be vigilant about. But for many patients, it may not be an issue. I think, one of the things that we're very clear around is the fact that time on metoclopramide and the dose is important, but it's that over time, that cumulative dose. So that's why the recommendations are to take it for no more than 12 weeks at a time. So I think that's important. You have to think through, how do we do that and help patients? So, kind of getting towards the end here, and I really want to make sure that there's time for questions is, in addition to what we're doing around research and both market research and the clinical research and further studying, we're supporting, the advocacy groups. So AGMD, GPAC, and IFFGD, we all have a common goal of improving the care for patients with gastroparesis. And frankly, all motility disorders, because they matter. It's important. We can do better. And we need to represent you and kind of make some of these comments something that are lessened, or in some ways a hope can be a thing of the past. Because when I hear somebody, person, say that I feel less than, and I feel like I'm shortchanging family, it cuts me to the core. And you have a patient here that's saying, and it isn't my fault. I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day that said, the patient said she thought it was her fault, and that's just not right. We've got to represent you better and give a sense of hope and control. I want you to have that control back over your daily life and your symptoms and those types of things. This picture is from about 18 months ago. It was our all company meeting, and we do more, as pharmaceutical companies, we do motivational exercises and stuff like that. And this time we kind of had, kind of breaking a board program, like, karate, I guess. And, on the one side of the board, we had to write our goal. And on the back side, we had to write the significant fears or concerns or obstacles to that goal. And the idea was to kind of break through those obstacles so we could achieve our goal. Uh, I went first, and it took me 3 times, but I broke through the board. But our singular goal here is fairly simple, if not recognizing it's hard, is to help 4,000 patients. That's what I wanted to do last year, is help 4,000 patients. That bar was pretty high. It's not just getting prescription, but it's following it to getting the prior authorization completed, working with the plans to kind of get it covered, and working with our pharmacies to actually get it filled and shipped to you. That's what helping patients is. It's not just the front end of the process, it's through the entire process. So with that, I'll kind of say we're not finished. There's many things we need to learn. There's more that we need to do. And, while I think we all have hope for a better future, I think, I like the quote from David Feigenbaum, who wrote the book Chasing My Cure. He said, hope is not a passive strategy. It's something we consistently need to be active in. And it starts with the awareness and empathy. So really, as an organization, I wanted to share that we do see you, we do hear you, and we do care about you. So with that, I'll just, open it up to questions or comments or Mary Angela, for you to.
Thank you so much, Chris. Very informative. And what strikes me is, of course, I've known you now for a while, but you get to see that human side of the pharmaceutical, especially with a company like this. And I know that there are many hills to climb because it has the black box warning, but it also shows that this works for some patients, and that timing is very important along with the dosage. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody have any questions? And Melissa, if you see anybody with a hand up that I'm missing, you can do it because you're more expertise at this than me.
Miss Kristen, do you have a question?
Yes, I was just curious if anybody's looking into, because Reglan is always with like the side effect of tardive dyskinesia, but any other side effects that actually causes issues? Because I've taken Reglan twice, and my side effects were completely different but severe. So I was just curious if anybody ever like looks into that as well as the tardive dyskinesia when, researching Reglan, looking into that.
Yeah, and I think I think it's a great question. I think it starts with really differentiating between tardive dyskinesia and other dyskinesia or dystonias, right? So tardive dyskinesia by definition means late and persistent movement, right? And so as a patient can have twitching or restlessness or or some general anxiousness, those are extrapyramidal side effects, but not tardive dyskinesia. But they're nonetheless important for us to track, and we have seen where companies are studying that. When we look at the extrapyramidal side effects other than tardive dyskinesia within our clinical trials, we do see that it happens at a low rate and comparable to what we see in the patients in our placebo arm. So I think maybe I can kind of go to that slide just real quick. So we do look at other things like CNS, nasal irritation, psychiatric, and cardiovascular. But this extrapyramidal side effects, again, they happen slightly more often, but comparable to placebo. And this is in the entire clinical program for Jamodi. So over
I love this
500
because
patients.
it was depression. It got dangerous actually, and it was Reglan that was causing it. And then this past
so
time,
Kristen, I
yeah.
really would say this, our product is not a product for you. right? If you've had
Yes.
the prior side effect, right? I mean, I just want to be clear about that because patient safety
I
is
was just
number one for
curious
us.
for other patients. Actually, I had to go because Reglan you can't take it with antidepressants. So I had to go off of it. But this past time, it was actually making me tired to the point I couldn't stay awake on Reglan because each time I take Reglan, it gives me different side effects
Yep.
and stuff. So right now, I'm not currently on, but I was just kind of checking, see what for other patients that
Yeah. And that,
other
yeah.
side effects are being researched.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I mean, we are, and we know, like, for example, the tiredness or fatigue is about 4% of the patients. It's our top three, right? Our top three is unpleasant taste, headache at 6.3%, and fatigue. So all the other side effects in our clinical trials, and again, those were 4 to 6 weeks long, right? So we have to kind of take that into consideration. But those were the top three. Unpleasant taste is really about the fact that they're when you take nasal, it can actually drip back down to the back of the throat, but it's important how you take it. It's actually a fine mist. It's not a heavy mist like some allergy nasal sprays, but you have to make sure that you tilt your head forward and you spray forward versus tilting your head back and sniffing. If you do that, you're more likely to kind of get the bad taste. So we are looking at it. It's important to us. And again, we're very clear about who's a candidate for our product versus not.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is Miss Letitia, did you have a question as well?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Hi, thank you for this presentation. I think you may have answered my question when you just answered Kristen's question. I too have been on Reglan, and I've had the twitching, my lips. The first time I was on it, I had the lip twitching. And then later on, my fingers would go numb and kind of like turn like kind of pinkish color. So, but every time I would go in the hospital, they tried so much of the different medicines and nothing worked. So they would still put me on Reglan, but they would use Benadryl. So my stomach is one that's sensitive to medicine. So I was gonna ask about the nasal spray that will I be a candidate for it? But if I'm having the reactions to the Reglan, I probably wouldn't be, huh?
Well, I'm not a physician and I don't want to provide medical advice. I would recommend that you do talk to your physician. Maybe, go to our website and get the medication guide so that you can be equipped with the right information. And you can make a joint decision with your provider. But I would say that, you should use caution, right, before
Okay.
deciding to use it.
Yeah, I did take a picture of that slide so I can have the information. And it's not just for because like my gastroparesis is not set on by diabetes, so it still, would be okay if it's just
Well, yeah, that's our indication. So that's how we have to promote it to the medical community. So
okay.
we're not indicated for idiopathic or other forms of gastroparesis. So
Okay.
again, that would be a conversation with the physician.
Okay, thank you.
And I just have a question related to that. I understand that because of FDA regulations, you have to specify diabetic gastroparesis. But that doesn't mean it couldn't be helpful for idiopathic gastroparesis, correct? That would be a something you'd want to discuss individually with your provider.
Yeah, I think theoretically, I mean, the core defect is the same. It's just what the cause is. So I think theoretically you're right. And again, I don't want to provide medical advice. I think that's a conversation with your provider.
Yeah, absolutely. Is Evoke considering making other medications or other forms of medications?
So I think as an organization, you see that we're small, and so we wouldn't maybe develop a product ourselves from scratch, if you will, from a research and development standpoint. but we're always looking at other assets that are, either available in the industry or maybe not actively being worked on. So we're always looking for those types of things to say, how else can we help? What can we add to, to our, those processes, take a while and take, kind of, a lot of evaluation and considerations. So we're always looking, but thus far we're not finding the right suitable agent.
Ms. Pam, did you have a question?
Yes, I have two-part question. The first is, I do not have diabetes gastroparesis. So my question would be, are you doing focus groups or any studies or anything in the future that would be for people that have idiopathic? And the second part was, if you could please give the website where your medication guide and resources are again for me.
Yes, ma'am. So thank you for your question. And so I'll say a couple things in all of our focus groups, and we do focus groups, and we also do market research through surveys and questionnaires. And we kind of have something that's called a longitudinal patient market research that includes both idiopathic as well as diabetic gastroparesis, and we look at type 1, appreciate whether there are more similarities or differences in what those different patient groups experience. And the long and the short of it is there's only minor differences between the different groups in terms of what we have learned in terms of, everything from, when the symptoms first presented and how they tried to treat them on their own to visiting physician and the journey to get a diagnosis and treatment, and even their perceptions about treatment. All fairly consistent, going from idiopathic to diabetic gastroparesis, and within diabetic gastroparesis type 1 and type 2, right? So I think there's more commonalities than similarities. And then the website, let me just kind of go back to that so we can kind of write it down. I think it was at the beginning. Oh, hold on, let me go back. I could say it, but here it is. Okay, so right here, bottom right, www.jamodyrx.com.
How are you spelling Jamodi?
GIMOTI and then RX.com.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have a question for Chris?
Well, I do. Thank you, Melissa. Eagle eye. She has eagle eyes. Chris, how long does it take before this drug has an effect where patients would notice, wow, I'm feeling better?
So we know from studies about in healthy volunteers, and they're called pharmacokinetic studies. And what we do is we take healthy volunteers and we give them oral metoclopramide, and we give them nasal metoclopramide, and we see how long before we can get measurable compound in the bloodstream, right? And what we see is that in healthy volunteers, so those patients that don't have gastroparesis and whose gut is functioning normally, that patients that Jamodi gets into the patient's bloodstream and as early as 15 minutes. Now that's the first time period based on how these studies are done. That's the first time period that's measured, right? So we don't measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We measure at 15 increments for the first hour, and then every hour thereafter for 24 hours. And so in healthy volunteers, the Jamodi gets into the bloodstream 9 times faster at 15 minutes. Now, as you go, oral plays catch up, right? Because it goes through and and finally gets absorbed in the intestine. But in the first hour, you're going to have an advantage by the nasal route. So that's getting into the bloodstream. That's not working. In our clinical trials, we measured symptom reduction, and we measured symptom reduction in weekly increments over 4-week trials. And I'll just kind of show some of those data. I apologize for the screen. So this is an example of our clinical trial data. So we measure symptom reduction as early as week 1, right? So whether a patient has improved symptoms earlier than that, we're not aware of. But what we do know is that week 1 and then throughout the course of the trial, this one was compared to placebo. And this is looking at moderate to severe patients that we had that reduction at week 1 and through the course of the trial. And then if you look at individual symptoms like nausea and abdominal pain, you see a similar pattern. So week 1 is what I can confidently say that some patients would start to feel relief. But you have to remember, every patient is different, and different people have a different response. But those are the data that we know in a study of 100 people.
And after the 12 weeks of being on that, if they're finding improvement, how long do they have to be off it before they start it again?
That's a common question that we receive, and the short answer is we don't know, and we can't provide guidance on that because it's not within our label, and it's this so-called drug holiday. So I think it's really another question for a provider. We've heard different things from different providers around how they practice. We're trying to get to that answer, Mary Angela. That's part of one of the studies that we're working on. And we're in discussions with the FDA, but we don't have an immediate answer for that right now. So I would encourage you to talk to your provider, have counsel with them, and understand whether it's a process that is right for you.
And the last thing I wanted to ask is, once they're off it after the 12 weeks, do they start to feel all their old symptoms again? And if so, does that happen immediately?
Yeah. Again, our studies didn't really look at that discontinuation and what happens next. It's just kind of the upfront part. But my educated guess would say yes, people would start to see the symptoms again because you took away the medication that was addressing not only the nausea and vomiting type of symptoms, but also it's prokinetic. It helps the stomach to move. So if you remove that, then you're likely to have the symptoms again. So again, it's not a cure, but it definitely can help many patients that have diabetic gastroparesis.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. That was very, very informative. And thank you, Melissa, for helping out there. And thank you for your questions, all great questions. I just, how I always close these programs, but before I close, I not only want to thank Chris again for his time in preparing for this and sharing all his knowledge, and not only the information about Evoke, but also about the nasal spray and that human side of they really do care. And that's important for patients to realize. I also want to pay a little tribute to Dr. Richard McCallum. When this organization was started, Dr. McCallum right away came on board as our medical advisor. And for nearly 30 years, because next year I believe it's our 30th milestone of being in existence, he has stepped up to the plate and been an advisor through that whole time period. And so I say you're one of the originals, and he is an original. He's been instrumental in helping our nonprofit but also in helping me as a personal note. His dedication and commitment is so admirable and so much appreciated. And I really cannot say enough thank yous and really love for Dr. McCallum and all he's done. He's one of the reasons this organization has existed. And we're just so grateful to him. And I join Chris in asking for prayers for Dr. McCallum and hopes for recovery. You are all my heroes, as is Dr. McCallum, as is Chris, and all of you. You live the life, that quiet life, or maybe not so quiet, of living with gastroparesis. Not an easy life at all, but you're doing it. And you really are an example to others, showing your courage, and somehow you get the strength to get through every day. And those are just some of the reasons why you are my heroes. And if there are times when you say, you know, I just feel so alone, no one understands, just remember, you have a whole community that understands. You have people like Chris who are behind the scenes, really caring and trying to understand what patients are going through. And you also have my heart. My heart is with you every day. I think of you every day. And you remain in my prayers every single day. May God bless you all. Thanks again, Chris. Thank you again, Melissa. And thank you all. God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.